So, we're going to start off with a new series called Connect 4. And this is kind of 4 ways to connect with God. We're pretty excited. This is going to take us all the way to the rest of 2022 in this. And I want to start off with sharing a little bit of, I'm probably right there in I'm an upper millennial, so I am 40 years old this year, all right? That's just ancient, okay? But here's the thing. In my day, back in my day, when I was in high school, we didn't have these cell phones, right? Okay? So when I left for hanging out, I was a 7th grader, I would hop on my bike on a Saturday and take off and not see my mom for the rest of the day. She had no idea where I was, thank God. No idea where I was, and I did not come back till 9 o'clock at night, and that was perfectly acceptable. Adults, do you know what I'm talking about? All right? You just go. There's just this trust. Nowadays, raise your hands. This is a no judge. Raise your hand if you have to text or tell your parents when you get somewhere. Yeah, totally different worlds, okay? I don't know if it's a lack of trust or if it's more dangerous. We won't get into that. But here's what I want to talk about, okay? I want to talk about what happens if there's poor signals. Okay? What happens if you have a hard time getting connected with someone? A few years ago, I have a wife and 2 kids. Her name is Katie, and I was going to meet Katie and the girls for lunch. So it gets to 11:15. I'm like, oh, okay, and I texted Katie, I'm leaving now. See you in a bit. We knew we were going to meet up at 11:30 and all that. I get to the restaurant. She's nowhere to be found. I'm like, okay. So I text, I'm here, right? You guys text here, right? Just here. Still, 11:30 happens. Nothing's going on. I don't see her car. I go into the restaurant. I sit down, and I go, okay, I got a table. Super chill at this time. It's 11:35, and then there's no contact, all right? There's no response, okay? So now what tends to happen? If you were in my shoes, would you get worried? Yes. I would start concluding, okay, something's wrong. Did her phone get shut off? Did her phone get broke on this? So I just kind of say, hey, how's it going? And I try to keep it light, ha ha ha, emoji, ha ha ha, And then it's 11:40, and now I'm concerned, hey, we said we're going to meet up. Are you okay? All right? And I start concluding the most logical things. She's lost her phone, and then I start concluding illogical things, okay? My kids and my wife is in the back of a van somewhere going to Kansas City, all right? I've started concluding, okay, weird stuff, to the point where, a sinkhole up and swallowed their vehicle on the way here, and that's why she can't get a hold of me, because it is extremely rude, all right? If you're not texting back, and I've texted you 30 times. And so now I'm Facebooking her, and I'm emailing her, and I'm trying to live stream if I can. Hey, I've texted other friends. Have you seen Katie? Have you seen my girls or whatnot? Okay, so I am totally freaked, full of anxiety, anger. I'm angry at her. I'm angry at the world. I'm angry at that. I remember feeling angry that God put me in the situation where I don't know where my wife is. All right, this is before Life 360 and all those other apps where I can see she was. Found out they went on a nature trail or a hike, and my wife left her phone in the car, okay? So she had no idea what the concept of time was, and it was just wonderful, and they were just skipping and having so much fun. It wasn't until she got back that she realized she was 35 minutes late that she eventually got a hold of me. And then she had the audacity, says, why are you upset? All right? Now, of course, I apologize because I was upset and yelling at her because I was worried, because I didn't feel connected to her. We live in this day and age where connection is constant, always connected with other people, even strangers and family members that previous generations would never have the ability to connect with across the world, across the states, and all that. But here's what I want to get at, and this is what this 4-week series is for the next 4 weeks is, what about your connection with God? Have you ever felt disconnected or far from God? Maybe it came after a huge high, and you went on a camp or a mission trip or SCYC, and you're feeling the spiritual high, this is amazing, and over a few weeks, and it just kind of fades, and now you're just kind of apathetic. You're not angry, you're not just upset, you're just, I don't feel close to God. I don't feel like there's a connection. My Wi-Fi is a little low and all that. Things are going sluggish. I don't remember the last time I read my Bible. The only time I pray is when there's a food in front of me, like those kind of things. I don't know if you've ever felt that way, but what happens? What should you do? We want you to learn kind of 4 easy, simple ways of how to feel, not just feel, but be connected with God. So, a couple things. I love what this psalmist says. And I think this shows kind of like my text message. This is like original text message thousands of years ago when you're upset and you don't feel connected with God. He writes this, "O Lord, I cry out to you. I will keep on pleading day by day. O Lord, why do you reject me?" That's pretty strong conclusion. Why do you turn your face from me? And I think he's just being real and saying this is what he feels. But here's the reality. Before we can continue on, before we can talk about how to connect with God and all that, we need to share in a reality. God never, ever, ever walks away from us, runs away from us, forgets about us, skips us, or in any other way where he doesn't fully try to embrace and be close to us. It's always on our end. It's always us who walk away from God. I like what A.W. Tozer says, every person is as close to God as they want to be. Think about that. Every person is as close to God as they want to be. So if you don't feel close to God, what's making it that you want to be in this position? Because I guarantee you, God didn't move away from you. We moved away from God. And that's the reality, and it's hard. God is perfect. He is the very definition of love. His love is sacrificial and unconditional. Unconditional means there is no conditions that we need to be or meet in order to be loved by God. So it's always on our end, which is hard, but also good, because that means we can do something about it. So, what disconnects us from God? I'm not going to go into the long laundry list of what disconnects us from God, but here's a few things that I have seen. Either I have experienced myself or have seen, all right, of what makes us disconnect or feel not close to God. Maybe it's a false belief. You wrongly believe something that leads to false behavior, that leads to false values and priorities and so forth. Sometimes it's a sin issue. You're doing something you shouldn't, and so you slowly back away because you're ashamed or there's guilt or you just don't want to deal with it. Maybe there's a distraction. Maybe you're hopped on your phone or social media or video games, or a boyfriend or girlfriend can be a distraction, or schoolwork or track or cross country or dance or work or almost anything else can be a distraction. Those are not bad things. We all can't be monks and run off. We still have to be in the world. But if it distracts us from getting connected to God, that's a distraction. Some are apathy and laziness, toxic relationships. I definitely know when there's a toxic relationship because I haven't seen some people at Access for a few weeks. Oh, they got a new boyfriend or girlfriend. Gotcha. Isn't that interesting how that kind of plays into a factor a lot of times? There's nothing wrong with a boyfriend-girlfriend, but if the boyfriend-girlfriend encourages you or discourages you from coming to Access, then that might be a toxic relationship. Unresolved pain. Maybe there's something done to you and unfairly done to you, and there's some pain that you have to wrestle with, and you're kind of blaming God because, God, why did you allow this to happen? That's a very common way of why we feel disconnected with God. Unforgiveness. We hold unforgiveness. The Bible is pretty clear. Holding unforgiveness of someone really separates us from God, particularly that feeling. Now, I'm not talking about losing our salvation. I'm talking about that connection, that feeling that we're close from God. So here's the reality. There's 4 big points, and that's what we're going to go over the next 4 weeks, 4 big disconnects of what we can do on our end to get closer to God, kind of get back into Wi-Fi range or get back into connecting on that. So lack of a prayer life. The other thing is misunderstanding of worship. We see other people raising their hands or jumping up and down to the same song we're listening to, but we don't feel what they feel. What's so different about it? We have a misunderstanding of worship. We have poor Bible reading habits. We read a Bible every Sunday night when it's on the screen. All right? Poor Bible habits. And number 4, not being in biblical community. And that's kind of what we're talking about tonight. Biblical community. So what is that? So here's kind of a reality that we need to kind of get over. God connects with us through community. There's a lot of ways that God connects us, but one of the big four is he connects with us through community, all right? Through community. Here's what I mean. Loneliness is a big factor that's hurting the growth of the church. It's a big factor that's hurting just spiritual growth in general. And people don't become lonely overnight. Very rarely, 99.99% of the time, it's not because the entire world corresponded with you and they just dropped you. But usually it's a slow fade and there's multiple little decisions that made you to the point where you're lonely. Here's what I mean, okay? The first step is when you're going to somewhere new. So if this is your first time, you're new here at Access, you're probably feeling this. If this is your first couple times, you're probably feeling this. And you don't know anyone because it's awkward and you don't know anyone and you're here and either mom made you or you're invited by a friend and you're still kind of like, I don't know in this. This could happen at school, this could happen anything, but we're going to use an example as the church, all right, Access. The next phase, all right, is no one knows me. So let's say you stick it out. You go for a couple weeks, and you start knowing people, but no one really knows you. Maybe a small group leader knows your name, all right, and what school you go to, but no one really knows who you really are, your priorities and all that. Most people, all right, stop in these first two levels and don't continue on. But if they do continue on, here's the next thing that tends to happen. They say phrases like, I don't have any friends at Access. Or another way of saying it is, I don't have any friends at Access, but I got friends at school. Or I got friends over here. I got these friends. I got my Dungeons & Dragons friends, or I got my school friends, or I got my track friends, or whatever friends group it is. You kind of replace friends. And you justify it because you don't actually want to admit that you're alone at this stage. You don't actually want to admit that you're lonely. Here's what happens. When you say, I don't have any friends, it's different than the last level of what actually concludes, like, yes, you are lonely, and that is, no one will ever be my friend. See, there's difference between I don't have any friends and I will never have any friends. When you start believing and lying to yourself and telling yourself, I will never have any friends, you start accepting that you are lonely. In fact, you want to be right, and so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and you say, I'm lonely, no one likes me, and you, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, make sure no one likes you. And you stop being a friend to other people. And you stop listening to other people, and you stop showing up and being there. And that's usually what happens. Not at the first stage, or the second stage, or even the third stage. It's when you accept the reality, in the future, I won't have any friends, and I definitely won't have any friends at Access. That breaks my heart every time I see someone going through this, because this doesn't happen overnight. This happens over several weeks. And it starts from a false belief, like, okay, I'm not going to have any friends. I wish we all had this ability just to make friends. And with just overnight, boom, it's that easy. But it's getting harder and harder as a society to make friends. We don't have time to why is that. But there's a reality here. But here's the problem. Loneliness actually affects us physically. It actually is causing severe problems in our society. Some of us have experienced loneliness for years. Some of us have only just short spurts of loneliness. But it basically leads to depression, heart disease, Alzheimer's. They've been studies where loneliness actually lowers your ability to learn, particularly in grade school and above 70 years old. And it also leads to obesity, which all leads to premature death. So why is that? Why is loneliness such a bad thing for your health? Well, here's why. Our lives, we're not just spiritual beings. There's a connection point. In fact, there's 4 connection points of what makes us, all right? There's the spiritual life, there's the emotional life, the social life, your friends, interactions, and then the physical life, all right? All of them are connected. So here's what's reality. If one of them is unhealthy, it's only a matter of time before it feeds into the other areas. I guarantee you, if you're unhealthy emotionally, you will be, or you already are, unhealthy spiritually. And eventually, it leads to unhealthy physically. If you're unhealthy socially, it could lead to unhealthy emotionally, that leads to unhealthy spiritual. See how it's all connected? Because God created us as a connected being, not just one layer, but multiple layers. Why? Because God is a connected being, the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. That's how God created us in this connection. I love what Jesus says about this, and most people don't see this connection. So Jesus was asked, what's the most important commandment, right? What's the most important commandment? Like, what is the most important thing I need to do? And Jesus summarized the entire Old Testament in 2 sentences. He summarized everything. He says, okay, here's the most important thing. And it says this. Jesus replied, the most important commandment is this. Listen, O Israel, the Lord our God is the one and only Lord. He's kind of quoting the Old Testament. And you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. The second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. No other commandment is greater than these. So did you catch that? All right? Did you catch that? The most important commandment, what you need to know more than anything else, is first, love the Lord your God with what? All your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Physically, emotionally, socially, and spiritually. See, the Bible doesn't use those words, but they use heart and soul and mind and strength. So there isn't an area of your life you shouldn't be loving God. But too many times we separate, okay, I'm at church, I'm the spiritual being now. But when I'm at school, I'm that social guy. I'm the butterfly. I'm the I don't even want to say it. But a totally separate life. Because socially, that's acceptable. And the reality is, Jesus is saying, no, that's not how this works. You need to love God with your whole being, of everything who makes you, to love God. And then the second thing is not second because it's less important. It's equally important. Equally important is love your neighbor as yourself. Because here's the thing. I really believe we cannot live out the Christian life alone. I love people who say, oh, I love your Jesus. I love your Jesus and all that. I'm just not into this institutional religion kind of thing. I'm just not into the church. I always go back and say, oh, awesome. Could you share that Bible verse for me that justifies that? Because here's the thing. God never designed us to love him without also loving others. And that's the hard part here of what we're saying is love your neighbor as yourself. If you don't have a neighbor, you can't love your neighbor as yourself. And if you have a hard time loving your neighbor, you're probably because you have a hard time loving yourself. And if you have a hard time loving yourself, you probably have a hard time loving God. Or at least accepting God's love. Right? So, we can't really connect with God unless we also connect with others. This is the hard part. This is a reality that Christianity is designed to be communal. It's designed to be in community in this. Now, what we need to know is that it's not just any community. It's not just any friend groups. All you have to do is just have friends. No. The Bible's pretty clear. There needs to be loving your neighbors, loving your enemies, but there needs to be a type of person, another believer. If you're a believer of Jesus Christ, it needs to have other believers that are connected with you. Other believers need to be the most influential part of your life. It doesn't mean you can't have non-Christian friends. In fact, we should have non-Christian friends. But the people who have the most influence on us should be other believers. Here's what I mean. All right, let me grab something. No, I'm not hiding. No one paid me. All right, so I was thinking about this the other day, okay? This is a garage sale bike, right? That's my bike. It's a Jaguar, just so you know. I know how to read. All right, so this bike, okay? Here's what I find fascinating. If you see the spokes in this bike, I don't know if you see this, okay? Okay? This is kind of like the world or even just the church, okay? This whole wheel here, all right? The spokes are us. The center point is God. Now here's what you notice, all right? The closer you are to God, the closer you are to other spikes or other spokes, right? The further away you are from the center, what's going on? The further you are away from other spokes, okay? That's how God designed the church in this. That's how God designed it. If Jesus is the center, if God is the center, the closer we are to Jesus, by design, the closer we should be to other believers. So if we feel distance, if we don't feel close to God, if we don't feel like, man, I'm just going through the motions, like it's not really close to me, then you're probably way up here, and you're probably also feeling distance from other people, particularly other believers. So the reality is this: when you are close to God, you'll be close to others. Because that's how God designed us, to iron sharpens iron, to help each other, to pray for each other. So we're going to wrap up with this. Okay? I'm going to move this a little bit. So a Connect 4 game, okay? Got to use this. So Connect 4 game, you have to get 4 in a row, all right? I know, shocking in this. So there's four application steps I want us to remember, and that's how we're going to wrap up tonight. Number 1, when it comes to Christian community, when it comes to feeling close to God, if you're going to get this community aspect right, the first basic bottom step that you have to do this first, all the others don't matter, is you have to show up. You can't say, I don't have any friends, and then never show up to have an opportunity to make those friends, or to develop those friends, or to be those friends to other people. Because here's the thing, when you don't show up, whether it's to Access, or whether it's another youth group, or another Christian community, I'm not talking about just with Access, but Access is what we are here on Sunday nights. Here's the reality, okay? Not only do you have a hard time probably connecting to others, but that means you are removing an opportunity for someone else to be friends. Because you are not just take on Sunday nights, you should also be giving. So when you don't show up, what happens? Those other people don't have anything to take from. You don't have anything to give. So the second one, all right, is join in. So first show up, then join in. How many of you, or don't say names, don't point to people, who have a person in a small group, but they're just there physically, but not socially, emotionally, mentally, they're just there in the room. Proximity does not mean community. Just because you're in the same room, here I'll give you an example. Do you think you know every person's name in this room? No. That's impossible unless we actually take the time to go around and introduce. It's very hard. And it's okay. I'm not asking that you have to be friends with every single person in this room. That would be awesome. That is extreme extroverts, okay? But what it does mean is your small groups, the people who are close to you, the people who you would identify as friends, you have to participate. You have to ask questions. You have to answer questions. You have to at least get to know them and have them get to know you. And that leads us to the third thing. You have to be real. If you're fake, people can see fake. And here's what fakeness shows. If you're fake to your friends, I'm not talking about being polite. I'm talking about just being fake. They're going to say, you don't trust us. You don't care for us because you're not being real. If you have a friend, you want a friend to be real to you, but you don't want to be real to that friend, that's not going to be a friend very long. So you have to be real. Authenticity builds and deepens trust. When you're real with someone else, you have that shared, oh, okay, we're both on an even plane. The last one is the strangest one, and it's one that has been, for me, something I didn't realize until I was way past high school. It's called get marked, all right? Now, for Be Real, before we get to get marked, for Be Real, this is water buffaloes, okay? And here's what's fascinating. With water buffaloes, when you have a problem, water buffaloes, as in a lion or a cheetah is coming and attacking a water buffalo, what they have found is that water buffalo put the young, the old, and the weak in the middle, and then the strong surrounds them, all right? This should be a small group. Sometimes you need to be strong, and you need to protect, and you need to love, and you need to accept, and you need to show grace, or pray, or call people out, and you need to be the strong water buffalo. But sometimes it's okay to be the weak water buffalo, and step back in the middle and let someone else help you to be protecting either from yourself or from other people, to speak into your life and realize I need some healing, and it's okay to get some help. That's what it means to be real. Because when you do that, something happens and you get marked. You have a shared experience. You have a shared experience to where you go to SCYC, you go on a mission trip. There's this experience where you go away and you have that shared experience oh man, this is something. Remember the time when, all right? Remember the time when a bunch of people dressed up as Carly, okay? That's a shared experience, okay? It can be something silly, It could be something powerful. It could be a weekend, or it could be a silly little game. Either way, you have now a shared experience. You get marked, which that means you come away something a little different in your life. Something's a little different. And when I hear get marked, the most common thing when you hear get marked, what do you think of? Tattoo! Yes! Yeah, tattoo. And so I wanted to get a tattoo for you. All right? I did. I wanted to get a tattoo for you. So I went out and I talked to Katie this morning. I was like, I'll get a tattoo. And she says, no, you cannot get a tattoo. All right? But I got one anyway. All right? You want to see it? You want to see my farmer's tan? All right? Okay? My tattoo. All right? It will wash off in a few days. This is the tattoo Katie allowed me to get. All right? But you have this weird, I look like Katie's, my youngest daughter, Emmy, she gave me an awesome compliment this afternoon. Oh, you look like The Rock. All right? I go, yes, sweetie, yes, I do. Right? But you get this mark, you get this thing. People get tattoos for some weird reasons, but one of the most common reasons is they want to remember something. They want to remember an experience that they had. They want to remember, like, this was a moment, and I want to remember that forever. I'm not saying go out and get tattoos, okay? That's something you're going to have to talk to your parents about, all right? But what I am saying is you need to have a shared experience. If you're lonely, start off with the bottom, but eventually get to the point is have that shared experience. Sign up to SCYC or a camp or something like that. Go out for ice cream as a small group, whatever it is, to get marked. But here's the reality. Life isn't pretty easy, and you just have 4 things, you just drop 4 things in, it's no big deal. Life, or Satan, or God's enemy, whatever, is fighting against you. And so there are going to be moves that it feels like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That doesn't mean you give up. That means you push forward. In fact, community and having a biblical community is the best way to push through the tough stuff. Before we talk about worship and prayer and Bible study, man, that Christian community can be a huge asset to help you feel connected to God. And it's going to be like that. Do you see the winners? Do you see where it went? Do you notice? It's not straight up and down. Yeah. Sometimes you have to realize that you have to think outside the box and you have to think about a few steps ahead. And you have to make the decision on that. So we're going to wrap up by doing something unique. All right? So I'm going to read a section in Romans, okay? And this is a beautiful section in Romans. And Romans was written by Paul, and he's writing to the church in Rome. And this church was very influential. And it's actually Romans 12. And it's a chapter that talks about spiritual gifts. It's a chapter he's writing directly to the church. So this is how we're going to end tonight, and then we have all kinds of desserts and all kinds of goodies. But I want you, if you want, you can just listen to my words, and you can close your eyes right now. You can pray. You can look it up on your own version of the Bible. But this is Romans 12, 9 through 18. And I'm reading the Message version because it's so poetic when he's talking about what should the church look like. And when I'm reading these, I want you just to don't focus on anyone else around you at this moment. But I want you to picture what this looks like as a church. And if you are part of it, where do you fit in? All right? So let me read this, and that's how we're going to end tonight. Love from the center of who you are, and don't fake it. Run for dear life from evil. Hold on for dear life to good. Be good friends who love deeply. Practice playing second fiddle. Don't burn out. Keep yourselves fueled and aflame. Be alert servants of the master, cheerfully expectant. Don't quit in hard times. Pray all the harder. Help needy Christians. Be inventive in your hospitality. It goes on. Bless your enemies. No cursing under your breath. Laugh with your happy friends when they're happy. Share tears when they're down. Get along with each other. don't be stuck up. Make friends with nobodies. Don't be the great somebody. Man, I love that. Don't hit back. Discover beauty in everyone. If you got it in you, get along with everybody. These words were written thousands of years ago. And as a church, this isn't a suggestion. This isn't ideal. This should be a reality. That means it's messy. That means we have to get along with people that we disagree with. Because make friends with nobodies, don't be the great somebody. Man, how different will high school be if everyone did that? Let me pray. Dear wonderful Father, thank you, Lord, for tonight. With all the goofiness and the beards and all the craziness, I just thank you, Lord, that we can come together and have fun. Lord, I praise your name, and I pray for the people right now who are feeling disconnected from you, who are feeling lonely, or feeling just apathetic and not quite sure why. I pray right now, Lord, that you shine your light brightly, that you put people in their lives for encouragement, for love, for calling out our garbage in our lives. Help us to be open. Help us to show up. Help us to join in, be real, and get marked. And Lord, I just pray, Lord, that you get glorified in each of our lives. So help us to be the church that you want us to be. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.